Hears from God, tells people what God's plans to do, and God, in the very first chapter, comes to Hosea and says, hey, I want you to go marry this harlot or this prostitute named Gomer. So Hosea, a righteous man, goes and marries a prostitute. This is already scandalous type of grace, a scandalous type of love, and he goes and he marries her. And then we see in chapter 2 of this book that after he marries her, they begin to have kids. So at the very beginning of 2, there's this story of hope. The first child is born, and God basically gives this child the name of hope that one day sins are going to be defeated. But then immediately following that, they have some more kids, and it begins to be basically God's contention with humanity's sins. And essentially that humanity is a bunch of sinners, and that we've all rejected God, and that we're all rejecting God. And so then from there, God gives us an image of what this is to God. What does humanity look like to God? And so the prostitute that Hosea married goes out and she goes back into prostitution. She leaves her husband, who has treated her righteously and well and loved her and committed to her, and she goes out and puts herself back on the market as a prostitute. And so from there we get verse 3 where God comes in with this mind-blowing, if you've been in church and you've heard the story, you don't think it's mind-blowing, it is mind-blowing, because if you, first off, obeyed God to marry a prostitute, and then that prostitute turned their back on you, went back into prostitution, and God said, I want you to go marry that person again, you would say, God, you're crazy. And so would I. So it's scandalous. But I see this story, the reason I chose From Now On and showed The Greatest Showman is because I just see this Greatest Showman, From Now On, the whole movie, and this story lining up, and then the story of the birth of Jesus, and I love connecting the dots, because first off, I love The Greatest Showman, like I already said. I mean, you've got Hugh Jackman as P.T. Barnum, the Wolverine comes into the circus, you know what I'm saying? That's already incredible. You've got the Keila, I think she's her name, Kayla Seeley, who plays the bearded woman who sings This Is Me, and This Is Me is like an anthem, right? I won't let you break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious, something like that. So, it's like, that's all. This is me. But you got that moment, then you got Zac Efron. I mean, come on. That's good. That's good. I like Zac Efron. And then you've got Anna Wheeler, who plays, is it Sinya Ziniga, however you say that name. I'm not good at that. Zendaya, thank you. From the front row, we got you. But I like that, you know. I like this story. And in this song, the very beginning of the song, it reminds me of what's happening in Hosea chapter 2. And P.T. Barnum, in the song that we just listened to, he says this quote. I want to read it to you. He says, for years and years, I chased their cheers, a never-ending speed of always needing more. P.T. Barnum was a man who had tasted success, he had gone after success, he had chased success, and he had left what he loved most, his family, to go pursue success, thinking that success is what he wanted and success is what he needed. And in the story of The Greatest Showman, we see that it leaves him feeling empty. That leaves him needing more. And this is a picture of humanity. It's a picture of Gomer in this moment where Gomer, she goes back into prostitution thinking, I need more than what I have here with this husband. I need more. So she goes in to reject her husband and goes into prostitution. And all of us do this. This is humanity. We all do this. In Hosea 2, it says this, basically the same line. The Greatest Showman has a line, and then Hosea 2 has a line right here. It says, she will chase her lovers, but not overtake them. Yes, she will seek them, but not find them. Then she will say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better for me than now. It's the same thing P.T. Barnum is saying. It's the same thing that earlier in the movie of The Greatest Showman, the song Never Enough, I can't do that. Did y'all know Never Enough, by the way? The actor is not the one singing it. It's a voiceover of somebody else. It's a good singer, but they wanted this actor to play her. And I will tell you what, that girl can sing, the one that can really sing, the one that's a voiceover. But you see this thread throughout the movie, and you see it here in this reality of humanity, that we're always chasing something. That every single human is chasing satisfaction, fulfillment, pleasure, approval. We're all chasing it. We're all going after it. And the same thing is happening in Hosea and Gomer that's happening in The Greatest Showman. And God says that she's going to chase lovers, but she's never going to overtake them. She's going to chase love. She's going to chase approval. She's going to chase satisfaction outside of me, and she's never going to find it. She will seek them, and not find them. And that is the reality of humanity, is that we're all searching for satisfaction and fulfillment, but we're searching for it in all the wrong places that will never fulfill, never satisfy, and never add up. Hosea is a book of forgiveness, and it's a book of love, but forgiveness and love don't ignore sin. Forgiveness and love don't ignore the problem. They don't just say, I love you and I forgive you, and so we're not going to talk about sin. No, forgiveness and love address sin, and sin is essentially searching for anything outside of a relationship with God. Sin has a lot of different things, but if I could boil it down, it is when we go and search for everything that God has to offer outside of Him. When we go search for validation, approval, acceptance, pleasure, fulfillment, satisfaction, joy, peace, hope. When we go to search for things that the human soul needs outside of God, we ultimately sin. Just like Hosea and Gomer, when Gomer goes to search for satisfaction outside of the marriage that God had for her, or just like Gomer goes and search outside of the marriage that God had, it's sin. And just because God's a forgiver and just because God's a lover doesn't mean that sin isn't real. And sin is a problem, and we have to talk about sin because every single one of us are a sinner. And we can't act like sin doesn't happen, and we can't act like sin isn't real, and we can't just rewrite the Bible and change things and try to make ourselves feel good and make it to where sin doesn't exist, because sin is a problem, and if we don't address the problem, we can never have the good news. If we don't ever address the bad news, we can never get to the good news. And here's the truth about sin. It may be fun in the moment, but in the end it will always be empty. It may be fun in the moment, but in the end it will always be empty. And it's most empty, and it's most tragic, because it separates you from the God that's willing to provide everything that your human soul really needs. It's tragic and it's empty because at the end of your life, no matter what you've accumulated, no matter what you've gained outside of God, when you go to the grave, you don't get to take it with you, and you will stand face to face with God, and you will have to answer for your sins to God, because in the end, He's the only thing that's really real outside of this time and space that we find ourselves in here on earth. It separates us from God. That's what sin does. In Hosea 2, chapter 2, it says this. It says, "For she is not my wife, and I am not her husband." Now, the reason I put that up there is because if you notice in chapter 3, the very first thing we wrote, Hosea is instructed by God to go love a woman. That's interesting, because Hosea is instructed to go back out and get his wife out of prostitution. But God does not refer to Gomer as Hosea's wife. God refers to Gomer as a woman. And why? Because she is not my wife and I am not her husband. Why? Because of sin. This is what sin does to the human race. This is what sin does to all of us. Sin, it separates us from God, and the pain and the tragedy of sin is that it promises us so much. But in the end, when we are face to face with God in eternity, it erases us from being with Him. That is the tragedy of sin. And just to be clear, in this story of Hosea and Gomer, every single one of us, we are Gomer. Every single one of us are the ones that have rejected God. Every single one of us are the sinners that have turned our back on a God that's loved us and provided everything for us that we didn't deserve. We all are Gomer. And we need God to come buy us back. Every single one of us. Our sin has placed us on a podium. I imagine Gomer, she goes back into prostitution and she's standing on a podium as people begin to buy her, essentially human trafficking, and people begin to throw out bids on what she's worth. And she's standing on a platform that she put herself on. And there's no way that she could force her husband to come back and buy her back. She could not get back. She could not be bought by her husband by choice. Her husband had to come after her. And all of us that are sinners, all of us that need God's grace, all of us that have fallen short of the glory of God and have sinned and are separated from God, we cannot get ourselves off of our sin podium. We cannot get ourselves back to God. We cannot buy ourselves back to God. There is no amount we can pay. There is no price we can do. There is nothing. And at this point in the story of the Bible, humanity needed hope. And so God gives Hosea and Gomer, he uses him as a picture to show what he is going to do for humanity. And he begins to promise things to humanity, and they become fulfilled when a baby was born on a Christmas day over 2,000 years ago. That from that moment on, humanity could be bought off of the sin platform forever and ever and ever. There's nothing we can do to get off of it, but thank God for Christmas and the Christmas season when God became a baby so that he could live the life we couldn't, do what we could not do, pay the price we couldn't pay, and get us off the sin podium that would separate us from God for eternity. Thank God for Christmas. Thank God for Christmas. There's three things that from now on I want you to know about God because of Jesus. Three things that from the moment that this baby was born that we can see in the story of Hosea and Gomer. Three things that are true because God put on flesh and walked among us and lived the life we couldn't live. Three things. The first one is this, is God is wooing you. It's an awesome word, right? Wooing. God is wooing you. I love that word. It was used in a commentary I was reading. I was like, I'm definitely throwing that in there. God is wooing you, you know? No. But wooing equals trying to gain love. God is trying to gain love. That's wild. Hosea comes back to purchase and gain the love back of the wife that was rightfully his in the first place, that chose on her own to leave his house. But he walked back ready to gain back love and pay the price that needed to be paid. This past week, Evan helped me put up Christmas lights in our house, and I have a picture that we have in there, I think. Yeah, that's the picture. It's kind of hard to see, but that's me on the roof, getting on the roof. And I just want to go ahead and say this, that I am scared of heights, and I think it's because I'm tall, and because my legs are long, and so I'm a little higher up when I'm on heights than the rest of you. So, no, I'm just kidding. Shot at short people. Honestly, short people, can I say something? Tall people, everybody thinks that being tall is awesome. There's a lot of good things about being tall, but there's a lot of bad things about being tall too. And I want for the record to stand up on behalf of all tall, no, I'm just kidding. And, but I did the lights for Lex, and Lex really wanted the lights to be done. Ever since I was a kid, I've never gotten on the roof really. I've gotten right off because I hate heights and it scares me. But I determined, Evan asked me, do you want me to get up on the roof? And I said, no, I'm getting up on the roof, I'm facing my fear, and I'm putting up lights for my wife. Because I want to gain her love. No. But I do want to, like, at the very least, like, another word for wooing would be like flirting or trying to create affection with a person that you like. And I do like my wife, and I do want to create affection with her. And so I do stupid stuff that I don't want to do, like getting up on a roof and looking like a complete idiot in that picture. Like my kid, I was thinking about it on the drive. Graham lately has really wanted us to hold his hand while we're driving. And so I'm driving down the road in the passenger seat with Lex not in the car, and I'm uncomfortable as all get out, reaching back to hold my kid's hand while I'm trying to drive, praying we don't get in a wreck. Because that's like, it's like this, and I'm being pulled, and my eyes are halfway on the road. But I love my kid, and I want him to love me, and so I get uncomfortable for him sometimes, and I do crazy stuff that doesn't make sense. And God, for the rest of the day, from now on, because of Christmas, God will always love you. He always loves you regardless, but Christmas just proves it even more. He loves you so much. He's for you. He's willing to pay the price for you. Imagine how humbling it had to be for Hosea to come to the auction for his wife as other people begin to look at him and begin to throw out numbers and begin to bid, and he is sitting there in the middle of it, and people are looking at it like, isn't that your wife, bro? Like, she left you. She wants to sleep with all of us. Like, how humbling would it be to have to be in the crowd to buy back your wife? I imagine it's just as humbling as when God left heaven and became a baby, the least of us, so that he could buy us back to himself. If God's willing to humble himself and become a baby for you, he's constantly wooing you. He's constantly trying to gain your love. He's forever affectionate towards you and wants to see you in relationship with him and forgiven of all the sins. He wants to see you taken off the sin podium and be put back in your proper place as in relationship with him forever and ever and ever. God is wooing you. Second thing is God has forgiven you. God has forgiven you. God's not just trying to gain your love. He's willingly ready to forgive you of what you've done. I love the verse in Hosea. I forgot to put it up because I'm an idiot, but I love the verse where he's going to, God's talking about the prophecy of when Hosea will go buy Gomer back, and he essentially says that ultimately you're going to go back and get her, and she's going to love you again, and you're going to show her the same affection. Essentially meaning that God has come to get us off the sin podium. And He's not just coming to get us off the sin podium. It's not like we forever have to be in this relationship where it's always held over our head, that we've sinned and that we've fallen short and that we were once on the podium. But that God is willing to wipe the record clean, to wipe the slate clean, to forgive us forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, to cast our sins as far as the east is from the west. Our God is willing to forgive. He's willing to forgive. Growing up, I had a really hard time telling the truth. And the reason I had a hard time telling the truth is every time I told the truth, I felt like people would just, and this isn't their fault, it's my fault, but I just felt like I would always get shamed for telling the truth. And I gotta tell you, man, the best thing about my wife, probably the top 2-3 things about my wife, is that I do stupid stuff, but I have tried to stay truthful in our marriage and tell her the truth, even when I messed up, even when I've done dumb stuff. And every time I go and tell her the truth, my wife is the best. She's the best about saying, it's okay, I forgive you. She's the best at not shaming me and not holding it over my head. She's the best at wiping the slate clean. And that's God. God doesn't hold it over your head and shame you. God forgives you. And it changes the entire relationship and the entire perspective. Every time I tell my wife the truth and she responds that way, it makes me want to tell her the truth more. God is not ready to beat you over the head when you tell Him the truth. He's willing to step in and forgive. I love this quote that I've been seeing a lot lately, and it says, I messed up, my dad is going to kill me. I messed up, I need to call my dad. Like, we can live an entire life looking at God as this God, I messed up, God's going to kill me. Like, that is an old way of viewing God. From now on, because of Christmas, because of the prophecy in Hosea and Gomer, because God loves us so much, from now on, we can see God as a forgiver and we can run to Him. We can run to Him with all of our errors, with all of our inadequacies, with all of our inabilities. We can run to God. We don't have to hide and feel shame and feel guilt all the time. We can open up to God, and His love and His forgiveness and His mercy is willing and able to restore the relationship. And that's the point number 3, is God is restoring you. God is not just forgiving you, God is restoring you. He's not just wiping the record clean. He's going back and getting everything you've lost. He's not just leaving you alone with a clean record. No, He's willing to step in and transform you and move in your life and work in your life and begin to redeem everything you lost because of sin. God doesn't just stop at forgiving sin. God goes to restoration, and there's a different. Here's the thing. God restores while sin abolishes. And I want to point this out really quickly. Sin abolishes. This next slide. Sin abolishes. It puts you to an end. You don't even know who you truly are. Sin will make you not even know who you truly are. Sin will end you. Sin will drop you. Sin, like prostitution, like Gomer, will use you and abuse you. And when it's done with you, it will drop you and leave you and make you feel like nothing, not even knowing who you are and not even knowing where to go and not even knowing where to run. But God forgives and God restores, and restoration returns. In Jesus, you can become who you were really made to be. In Jesus, you can get all the grace you need to say yes to Him and no to ungodliness. In Jesus, in a relationship with Jesus, He can make you who you were really made to be, and you can walk in confidence for the rest of the days of your life. That's what Jesus does. My favorite moment from Now On song It's kind of this climactic moment, right, where we all saw it. They're all clapping their hands. And we will come back home. And we will come back home. If I had rhythm, I would do the clapping. But I want to read this quote from that song. The sun beginning to dim, feeling the winter wind grow cold. A man learns who is there for him when the glitter fades and the walls won't hold. From that rubble, what remains can only be what's true. If all what's lost, there is more I gain because it led me back to you. The reason I choose that is because all of us are going to be found in desperation. Every single one of us are found on the sin platform. Even if you're a Christian, there are moments where you feel like you're rejecting God again. Even if you love Jesus, there's moments where you fail. There's moments when you're inadequate. Even if you love Jesus, you have bad days. There's so many different times where in a year like 2020, in different family situations, in different economic situations, and parents leaving and parents going, and finances dropping off, and not knowing what you're going to do for the next meal, not knowing how you're going to stay warm in the middle of the night, not knowing how you're going to stay where you're at, like all these different things that can happen. And it's moments of desperation where the sun's beginning to dim, where you feel the winter wind, you feel the inadequacy of our world to provide everything that you need. You feel the harshness. You feel that you need more. It's in that moment that you can learn where it says you'll learns who is there for him. When the glitter fades, the walls won't hold. When everything you put your trust into here on the earth, when it won't hold, when it won't keep you in peace, when it won't keep you satisfied, when it won't give you joy anymore, when everything you put your trust in begins to break and begins to fold, it's a moment of desperation. And the reality is in desperation, we can go back to an old way of living, go back to an old sin platform, or we can come home. You can go home. Like you can really go home. There's a story in the Bible of the prodigal son, right? And to keep it short, prodigal son tells his dad, I want all my money, I'm going to leave. He takes all his money, he leaves, he goes out, and he begins to live rebelliously. He begins to hit up the Las Vegas Strip and do all the crazy things that you could possibly do, right? And he does all of it, and then all of a sudden, all of his reckless living, that's part of it, but then all of a sudden, like basically COVID-19 hits. The economy crashes, there's a famine in the land, nobody knows where they're going to get their next meal from. He finds himself eating slop in the pig pen, right? A picture of what this world will do to you. If you don't stay with your father and don't trust your father, and finally in a moment of desperation, he has a choice. Do I stay where I'm at? Do I keep rejecting my father, or do I run back to my father? And he goes to run back to his father. He has an apology letter typed up, ready to give his father. You know what I'm talking about, like when you are trying to ask for forgiveness to somebody and you've like got it all plotted up in your head of like, I know I did this and this and this, but I was thinking about this and I really am sorry. And you're trying to kind of manipulate the situation. You are sorry, but you're also trying to manipulate it to where you get a good response. You know what I'm saying? He's got all this typed up. And he can't even get the letter out to his dad before his dad is running towards him, hugging him, telling everybody, get all the best food, get all the best music, let's go. We're going to have a party in the house. All you got to do is come home. God isn't looking to beat you and kill you and get mad at you. You can keep turning to everything but Jesus, but everything else will leave you empty on the inside and leave you empty in the end. Everything else will leave you empty. Everything else, like prostitution, like Gomer was, it'll promise a lot. It might even feel good for a moment. But there will come a day when it will get done with you. It will leave you where you're at, and it will move on to the next thing, the next person. But God loves you. He loves you so much. He's willing to step in. I can't fix your parents' economic situation. I can't fix your family problems. I can't fix the drama with your friends. I can't fix any of that. I mean, to be honest, I can't fix your addiction. I can't even fix your sin problems. I can't do anything. But Jesus loves you enough too. And every week you come in here, I can point you to Jesus. All I do is I pray that you hear that He loves you and He's for you and He's ready to forgive you. He's ready to restore you. you'll turn to him. Well, what does that mean, turning to him? I'll just tell you what turning to him for me was. It was just a moment of desperation. And I just began to seek him. When I say seek him, that sounds like a super spiritual word, but I just began to read the Bible, began to put on worship music, began to sit alone in my room and pray. And slowly, he revealed himself to me. My life will never be the same because of that. I have problems. I have issues. But I also have hope. And I don't look anywhere else in my life but Jesus. Because of how real he's become to me. Because of how much grace he's given me. Because of how much he's loved me. Because of how much he's forgiven me. Sin is fast and forceful, man. Promises a lot of pleasure. Any of us that have sinned, especially for pleasure, pleasure's lasted a second and then it's gone and then you leave feeling empty, right? But God is kind, he's patient. And I'm not telling you today that if you walk out of this place and you begin to seek Jesus, that instantly you'll feel his forgiveness and his restoration. He will forgive you in an instant. He will save you in an instant. But he's patient and he's kind. His love is patient. His love is kind. He's into slow work. He's into heart transformation and heart surgery, and he's into daily meetings, and he's into consistency, and he's into faithfulness, and he's into day in, day out meeting with him and doing the slow work. Play the slow game with God. Don't play the fast game with sin. Play the slow game with God, because he's the only one that can get you off of the platform that you deserve.